Good evening everyone, and welcome to Life of a Dev episode 1. Today we're going to be going over how to start a simple Sponge plugin and the stuff you need kind of to get it started, and we're going to create a disable crafting plugin which disallows interaction with a crafting table by users. So what we're going to start off with today is we're going to create a new project. I'm going to file new project. Then we're going to select Maven project from underneath the Maven list. So I like to check to create a simple project. You don't need to worry about the archetype selection, so it really just helps you avoid that. The group ID is the ID of kind of who you are, so I'm going to do life.of.a.dev because that's currently who I am. And we're going to call this DisableCraft. And the versioning you can change to whatever you like, and the packaging should stay ajar. So then you click Finish, and it should generate a project for you over on the left hand side. And so you kind of start off with all the folders that you need. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change it from a JRE system library. So to do that, you right click, go to Properties, go to the Java build path, you remove that. So I'm going to add a library, JRE system library, execution environment, and I'm going to change it to Java SE-1.8 because that is what I will need to run it. And that should update it so it no longer has a warning. So then to start on the actual plugin, we're going to go to the pom.xml. You want to make sure that the overview is correct because that is the information that it's going to used to create the jar and all that stuff. And then you're going to go to the bottom, down to pom.xml, and you'll see this screen. Should all still be the same. And then you're going to add in the dependencies and the repository listing. So what this does is the repository links to the Sponge plugin on the Maven side, and the dependency states the API that you're using and exactly what part you're using it from, and then that will add it into the Maven dependencies along with all the other stuff that you might need. And so once you have that in there, you are all set to close that and not worry about it again. With the Sponge plugins, since they are technically loaded as a mod, they do need a mod ID folder. So in the resources, you're going to create a new file and call it mcmod.info. And this will just allow it to not create an error on the loading when Sponge loads it. And so this is basically in the format of a kind of like an array of objects. So it has the mod ID, which for ours is going to be DisableCraft. Mod IDs do need to be all lowercase with no spaces, nothing like that, just all lowercase letters. The name can be whatever you like it to be. I'm going to do DisableCraft. The version, since this is our first version, we're going to do 0.0.1, and that is also still a string. You can add a description, so it's a plugin used to disable crafting, I'm going to say, and then the author list. So if anyone helps you with it, make sure you put their name in the author list. It is just a list of strings, but for now, I can say tapred-v2 because that's my Minecraft username. And so that makes us all done with this. This just stops it so it doesn't create a warning on the server startup. So it's not necessarily needed, but it is nice to have. So we'll close out of that. Now we'll get into the actual programming portion of it. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to make a new package under the source-main-java. I like to use my group ID followed by the plugin name for the main one to show where the main class should be. and then you can create a class inside of that. I like to create it using the same name as the project to show that it's the main, but you could also just use a class named main.java. Okay, so now we get our class that we want, and to show that it's a Sponge plugin, we do have to actually identify it as a plugin. So you're going to add the plugin annotation, which is going to have the ID, which is the mod ID. Then you're going to add the name. Don't need that in quotes, don't know why. This is all the stuff that you just put in the mcmod.info, so it should be okay to just carry all that information over, and you always want to make sure that they stay the same. And you'll see that we get a warning. That's just that we have to import the necessary, so you do import plugin and make sure that it's from the Sponge API, which it is, and that'll get rid of the errors. And so now when it loads, Sponge will be able to look at it and be like, oh, it's a Sponge plugin with this mod ID, this name, and this version, and it'll just store that information. So another thing that you're going to need is a logger. This allows your plugin to actually write out to the console to be able to pass along information or anything of that sort. I actually imported the wrong logger. Should have done that one. So it's going to be underlined in yellow because we haven't used it yet, but that's okay. We will use it. So the way I like to use the logger is when DisableCraft gets loaded, it'll send out a message saying that DisableCraft has started. This is so that you know that it did start and there wasn't an error in it that caused it to break. So for that, you need to add an event listener, which you just add the annotation tag @listener onto an event. So the name of the function doesn't matter, but the first parameter is going to be the event. So it's going to be in the game initialization event, which we will call event. You are going to need to import that. Make sure again that it's from Sponge. And so that's basically going to say when the game is initializing, do all the stuff that's in here. And all I'm going to do in this is just log some info that DisableCraft has started. So this allows you to refer to class variables that are private. So when you say this, it means anything that's up here. And then logger is a logger. And then the .info means that it's just going to put out that information. There is also a .warn and .error that will be put out when there is a bigger problem with the plugin. So it's usually used for error handling, warning, stuff like that. And so that's all we really need to do with the logger. So for right now, we are going to move on to the disabling of the crafting. This is relatively simple as far as it goes. We're going to keep it in the same folder, or same file, sorry, and you don't need to put them in separate files unless you want to unload them, but that'll be something we talk about way later. So you add in the listener tag again, and this one is going to be a public void on right click, and we're going to want the interact block event secondary main hand. So basically that little section is saying that the interact block event, sorry, that should be capital there. The interact block event, so when a player interacts with a block, the secondary is that they're using the secondary click, and it also provides more information and then the main hand is that they are hitting it with their something in an item with their hand. And we also want to add the at first annotation for the player. This will allow us to easily get the player object without having to find a way to get it through the event. So it's just a much more convenient way for that. So what we want to do then is we want to make sure that we can actually find the target block. So what you do is you do the event.getTargetBlock.getLocation.isPresent. And so what this will basically do is it will test to see that the block actually exists and that it's not just some sort of weird error that's happening or when like they punch the error or something. So that's just a double check to ensure that nothing gets through that shouldn't. Then we want to get the location of the block. So it's going to be location type with the location world. Block. So we're just going to call it block. Do event get target block get location get, and then we'll do the sponge location and the sponge world. That error is fine, or warning, sorry. So what we're doing there is we're pretty much getting the location in the world of the block, and then so since the get location is an optional, which means that it can either have a value or it's going to be null. You do have to .get the value, which we know has a value because it was present, and then you have to cast it to a location to be able to fit into this variable. And since we now have that, we can move on. So pretty much all we want to have left to do is to check to see if it is a crafting table. If it's a crafting table that they're trying to interact with, we want to cancel it. So we're going to do block. When we get the block, get block dot get type. So this will return the type of block that it is. And so then we want to compare it to a block types dot crafting table. So that's pretty much just saying that's the default block type. There's also item types from the base Minecraft, and then the crafting table is obviously the crafting table. And so we're seeing if the block that they're hitting is of type crafting table, and if it is, we just want to event that's set cancelled true. And so that's pretty much all you need to do for this plugin. If you do want to get rid of this warning, you can just add a suppress warning. It's no big deal. And that you can make more specific to get rid of that, which actually removes the warning from that. So that's how you cancel the interaction with a crafting table. So they'll pretty much right click on it and it just won't do anything. So now that we're all done with building our plugin, we actually want to build it into a jar. So to do that, you're going to right click on your plugin, go down to run as, do a Maven install, and then that's going to install it all for you. Mine just had an error there, so we'll rerun it. So you see down here it'll say build success, and then what you have to do is you have to go find your workspace folder, and in there will be your DisableCraft project. You're going to click in there, and then you're going to click on the target folder, which will now have a jar in there, which you can actually drag out to your desktop, which then you can add it to your add it to your server folder, files, anything that you'd like to do with it. So what we're going to do right now is actually hop on over to Minecraft to kind of show you how it works on there. I'm going to be showing it to you on my test server, and I'll see you then. So welcome back to the server. So as you can see, we have our crafting table, and if we right click on it, it won't actually open the crafting inventory. That's the way it's supposed to be. So that's pretty much all it does, is it checks the interactions. Like, we can still interact with the dispensers, we can still interact with furnaces, anything else. You can disable those if you want, using the same method. That's all up to you. So basically that's all the plugin was supposed to do for today. So it worked, it was successful. Please let me know down below what exactly you guys want to see. If you want to see anything specific, any special types of mods, plugins, something you've always wanted to do, stuff like that. Also, let me know other series you'd like to see. I think I'm going to do some server showcases, some episodes of a survival series where we make all the plugins and mods that we would like to add in some difficulty. Once we get a bit further into the teaching process, and we can do other people's mods as well. So just let me know down below what you'd like to see. That's all I have for you today. So I hope you enjoyed.